Have you ever felt that sudden rush of sadness and disbelief when you hear about a young life taken in a tragic and senseless way? That feeling is what many people experienced when the world discovered the heartbreaking story of Tristyn Bailey. She was just a 13-year-old girl, full of energy and hopes for the future, before everything changed on a Mother's Day morning in 2021. What began as a seemingly normal day ended with the shocking news that Tristyn had gone missing. And the community soon discovered that the tragic truth was far darker than anyone could have imagined. Tristyn Bailey lived in St. Johns County, Florida, with her loving family. She was the youngest of 5 children, and her parents, Forrest and Stacy Bailey, adored her bright spirit and fearless attitude. She was born on January 18, 2008, in Singapore, but her family eventually moved to Florida, where they settled into a comfortable life. Friends remember Tristyn as full of life, always ready to stand up for others if she saw them being picked on or treated unfairly. Her mother recalled how Tristyn had a special way of bringing joy into every situation. Whether she was cheering with her squad or playing around with her siblings, she had a can-do attitude that left a mark on everyone she met. Tristyn was in the 7th grade at Patriot Oaks Academy, a school where she was not just a student, but also a shining star on the cheerleading squad. Those who knew her described her as a bubbly and popular girl who lifted spirits wherever she went. She was dedicated to her craft, practicing routines for cheerleading competitions and school events. She seemed to have a gift for brightening days, whether she was in the school cafeteria, walking the hallways with a giant smile, or helping younger kids feel included. Tristyn showed kindness that was well beyond her years. Like many teenagers, Tristyn also had friends both in and outside of school. One of these acquaintances was a boy named Aiden Fucci. He was around Tristyn's age, 14 at the time, and a fellow student at Patriot Oaks Academy. People who knew Aiden described him in different ways. Some found him quiet or somewhat distant, while others said he would sometimes try to be funny. But as people would later learn, there was a darker side to him. Still, in the days before this tragedy, nobody imagined that their friendship or passing connection would end in violence, especially not something so brutal and shocking as murder. On May 9th, 2021, Mother's Day, Stacy Bailey woke up, likely excited about celebrating the holiday with her children. The family had plans to spend the day together, enjoying quality time and making happy memories. But when one of Tristyn's siblings went to wake her up, they discovered that her room was empty. At first, they thought she might simply be downstairs or outside, but nobody could find her. Growing more nervous, they searched around the house and checked the yard, hoping she might have gone for a quick walk or jog around the block. Yet there was no sign of her. By 9 a.m., Stacy Bailey felt that terrible jolt of panic rise in her chest, and she called 911 to report her daughter missing. It did not take long for the local authorities and neighbors to spring into action. They began scouring the area for any clue about where Tristyn might have gone. People who lived in the neighborhood checked their yards and security camera footage. Friends who had seen her the day before tried to recall if she mentioned any weekend plans. Nobody wanted to believe that something could be seriously wrong, but that ominous possibility hung in the air. Everyone hoped that maybe Tristyn had simply run off with a friend without telling anyone, or that there had been a misunderstanding about where she was supposed to be. During the early afternoon, investigators questioned various people who might know something about Tristyn's disappearance. One of those people was a teenage friend named Doff Absher. According to later reports, Aiden Fucci had asked Doffy's for Tristyn's phone number that same morning, which suggested that Aiden had been trying to get in touch with her. Investigators suspected that Aiden was one of the last people to see Tristyn before she went missing, and they pressed him for details. Aiden told them that, yes, he had been with Tristyn, but they parted ways, and he had no idea what happened next. However, things quickly became more suspicious when security footage from a home camera appeared to show Tristyn walking with someone who strongly resembled Aiden at 1:45 a.m. that morning. Then, at around 3:27 a.m., the camera picked up what looked like Aiden running back in the opposite direction, holding a pair of white shoes. This did not match his claim that they had separated in a much more casual way. Why would he be running with his shoes in hand in the middle of the night? That question weighed heavily on investigators. Despite everyone's hopes that Tristyn might still be alive and well, a horrifying discovery was made around 6 p.m. on May 9th. A local resident, taking a walk in a wooded area near the end of Saddlestone Drive, stumbled upon what looked like a young girl lying on the ground. The person called the police, and they responded immediately, though they must have hoped for the best. Authorities soon confirmed the worst. The body was Tristyn Bailey. She was found in that wooded area, close to a retention pond, and her body showed clear signs of violence. The news spread quickly, sending shockwaves of grief and disbelief through the entire community. Tristyn had suffered 114 stab wounds, a fact so disturbing that even experienced police officers and investigators could hardly believe it. The cruelty of such an attack was almost unimaginable. Equally horrifying was the detail that 49 of those stab wounds were considered defensive, meaning Tristyn likely fought hard to survive. She must have been terrified and in pain, yet she still tried to defend herself against her attacker. Near Tristyn's body, in a retention pond, authorities recovered a knife. The tip of the blade was missing, and later, during the autopsy, it was discovered embedded in Tristyn's scalp. Forensic tests showed that this knife, which had a missing tip, matched the fragment found in her body, making it almost certain that this was the murder weapon. Stranger still, the words karma and a small smiley face were found on her ankles. However, it is not known for sure who drew those marks or why. Given the evidence from the surveillance camera, investigators had a strong reason to suspect Aiden Fucci. They arrived at his house around midnight on May 10th, determined to find any proof that connected him to the crime. In his bedroom, they found clothing with traces of blood, along with a knife sheath that matched the murder weapon. They also discovered that someone had tried to rinse blood off in the bathroom sink. This was not just suspicious, it was incriminating. As the hours wore on, investigators compiled a growing mountain of evidence that pointed to Aiden Fucci as the one responsible for Tristyn Bailey's murder. During this time, Aiden was taken into custody for questioning. He gave conflicting accounts of what happened. At first, he claimed to have walked with Tristyn for a short while before she went off in another direction to head home. But then, when confronted with the possibility that security camera footage had shown him running alone, he changed his story. He told investigators that Tristyn made him uncomfortable by trying to touch him inappropriately, and that he shoved her away. According to him, she fell and hit her head. This story, however, made little sense when weighed against the physical evidence of 114 stab wounds. No version of she hit her head could explain the ferocity or the magnitude of that violence. One of the strangest turns of events occurred when Aiden, while sitting in the back of a patrol car, took a selfie. In this photo, which he posted on the social media app Snapchat, he wrote, "Hey guys, has anybody seen Tristyn lately?" Spelling errors included. There was also a video clip where he mentioned Tristyn's name. This strange, almost boastful behavior struck many people as extremely callous and cruel. It was as if he was making a joke out of the terrible circumstances. Investigators would later use this social media post as another piece of evidence showing that Aiden Fucci did not appear to feel normal remorse or concern about Tristyn's disappearance. Shortly after that, he was officially arrested for second-degree murder. But as more evidence came to light, the charge was upgraded to first-degree murder. That meant the legal system believed Aiden Fucci had planned and intentionally carried out Tristyn's killing. Prosecutors argued that Aiden had talked about wanting to kill someone for quite some time. At a press conference on May 27, 2021, State Attorney R.J. Larissa announced that Aiden had made statements to several friends about how he planned to take someone into the woods and stab them to death. This was not a spur-of-the-moment act committed in sudden rage. Instead, it was something he had allegedly fantasized about and threatened to do long before it actually happened. As more details emerged, the story became even more chilling. A police report, made public in July 2021, claimed that Aiden had a habit of talking about his dark fantasies. He sometimes carried a knife around with him, and he told others that he heard voices inside his head. One of Aiden's ex-girlfriends stated that Aiden would joke about stabbing her for fun. She remembered times when he pretended to stab her with a knife. Whether these behaviors were cries for help, attempts at being edgy, or genuine signs of violent impulses. They took on a horrifying new meaning after Tristyn's death. While the community reeled from the shock, Aiden Fucci's mother, Crystal Smith, also found herself in legal trouble. Investigators said she washed blood off of Aiden's jeans, which resulted in her arrest for tampering with evidence. She was later released, but the accusation that she tried to get rid of evidence caused a strong reaction from the public. People wondered if she was simply acting as a mother trying to protect her child in a moment of panic, or if she had known something more. It raised difficult questions about how families cope when someone they love is accused of such an unimaginable act. Still, the primary focus for most was on the murder itself and seeking justice for Tristyn Bailey. For many months, Aiden Fucci sat in a juvenile facility but was eventually transferred to Duval County Jail. Because of the nature of the crime, its brutality, and the fact that investigators believe he acted with premeditation, he was charged as an adult, even though he was only 14 at the time of the killing. In the United States, severe crimes committed by minors can sometimes lead the court to treat them as adults, particularly in cases of murder. The question everyone asked was whether a child of that age should face adult consequences for such a horrific crime. In the legal battle that followed, evidence was gathered meticulously. The prosecution highlighted the sheer cruelty and pre-planning they believed Aiden had demonstrated. They pointed to how the knife tip was found in Tristyn's scalp, the number of wounds she suffered, and how many were defensive in nature. They also brought up his chilling statements about wanting to kill someone and the strange Snapchat posts he made after she went missing. If there was ever a case that seemed to show premeditation and awareness of wrongdoing, this one seemed to be it. Defense lawyers had a difficult task. They would have to find some way to convince a jury that Aiden either acted without full mental awareness or was not the person responsible. Yet the evidence was very heavy against him, and the community demanded justice. Many people in St. Johns County and beyond felt enormous sympathy for the Bailey family, who had lost their youngest daughter in such a terrible way. They also kept vigil for Tristyn's siblings, who had to face the fact that their sister would never return. Then, on February 6, 2023, a dramatic turn took place. Right before the jury selection was set to begin, Aiden Fucci surprised many by pleading guilty to first-degree murder. His plea took away the possibility of a full jury trial. Some wondered if he had chosen to plead guilty to avoid putting his family and himself through the stress of a long public trial. Others suspected he was hoping to receive some measure of leniency by admitting guilt. Regardless of the reason, this move meant that he accepted legal responsibility for Tristyn's death. With that guilty plea, the court moved on to the sentencing phase. Judge R. Lee Smith presided over the case and heard emotional statements from Tristyn's family. One of the most powerful moments came when Tristyn's sister, Alexis, placed 114 aqua-colored stone hearts into a glass jar, one by one, to represent each stab wound inflicted on Tristyn. The sound of the stones dropping into the jar echoed the pain the family felt, and it reminded everyone in the courtroom of the violence that Tristyn suffered. After each family member gave their statement, they added a white stone to represent a specific message or memory linked to Tristyn's death. This stirring symbol turned the courtroom silent as people felt the weight of what had happened. During the sentencing, Judge Smith called the murder the most difficult and shocking case he had presided over. He stressed that this was not a crime motivated by revenge, jealousy, or passion. Instead, the judge stated it was done for no reason except Aiden's own twisted desire to kill. Many who followed the case agreed that the sheer lack of motive or remorse made this murder stand out among the most brutal crimes they had ever heard about. On March 24, 2023, Aiden Fucci, who was 16 by then, was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 25 years. This sentencing took into account that he was a minor at the time of the murder. In many states, when a minor is convicted of first-degree murder, the law requires a review of their sentence after a certain number of years. Here, Florida law would allow him a parole review after 25 years. If, at that time, parole is denied, he would remain in prison, potentially for the rest of his life. While some argued this was too harsh for someone so young, others felt it was the only way to deliver justice, given the severity of the crime. With the legal proceedings concluded, Aiden Fucci was sent to the Cross City Correctional Institution to serve his sentence. Meanwhile, Tristyn's family was left to pick up the pieces of their shattered life. The sorrow of losing a bright and promising daughter was made even more painful by the viciousness of the act. How could something like this happen in a peaceful suburb known for good schools and family-friendly neighborhoods? Many in St. Johns County asked themselves that question, searching for answers that may never be fully found. Out of their grief, though, Tristyn's family decided to do something meaningful in her memory. They launched the Tristyn Bailey Memorial Foundation. This organization aimed to honor the lively spirit of their beloved daughter by helping others and supporting causes that would have mattered to her. One of the most significant achievements of the foundation was helping to push through a law in Florida that restricts the public release of crime scene photographs involving murdered minors. This step protects families who have already suffered an unbearable loss from further pain that might come from having their child's final. Tragic images is shown in media reports or online. Yet the foundation is more than just about legal change. It is also about preserving Tristyn's spirit and encouraging the community to care for one another. People close to the Bailey family have said that Tristyn stood up for others. She was a friend to those in need, and she had a heart for helping. The foundation's work, therefore, not only keeps her memory alive, but also encourages everyone to show the type of kindness and compassion that Tristyn exemplified in her day-to-day life. It offers scholarships and organizes cheer events, fitting tributes for a girl who loved cheerleading with all her heart. As people remember Tristyn, they also reflect on the reality that someone so young could be capable of such brutal violence. Aiden Fucci's case started many difficult conversations about mental health, juvenile justice, and how schools and parents can identify warning signs of possible violent behavior. Some wonder if more could have been done to notice the red flags Aiden apparently waved when he talked about killing people, carried around a knife, and even pretended to stab his ex-girlfriend. Perhaps if someone had taken his words more seriously, Tristyn's life might have been saved. But such questions can never truly be answered, leaving only the faint hope that more awareness might prevent another tragedy in the future. The personal dimension is perhaps the hardest to bear. Tristyn's family must now live each day without their energetic, caring daughter. Friends at school feel the emptiness left by her absence in the cheerleading squad and the classroom. A community that once felt safe was left questioning how a 13-year-old girl could be lost in the most violent way to someone she probably trusted enough to walk with on a cool, dark night. In the end, the heartbreak is layered and touches almost everyone who hears this story. If there is any small measure of comfort, it is that justice was pursued quickly, with law enforcement, volunteers, and the legal system working together to find answers and hold Aiden Fucci accountable. The police acted swiftly. From a moment Tristyn was reported missing to the time, they uncovered solid evidence linking Aiden to the crime. Their investigation involved collecting camera footage, analyzing phone records, interviewing friends and family, and executing a search warrant that found key pieces of evidence in Aiden's home. The community also played a vital role, with residents checking their properties and providing security footage to the authorities. The speed of this investigation meant that Tristyn's family was not left in the dark for an extended time, wondering where their daughter might be or what had happened to her. Still, the knowledge of her fate was no less painful, but at least they could move forward in seeking closure and justice. A memorial service for Tristyn was held, where family and friends came together to celebrate her short but beautiful life. People remembered her as someone who always wore a bright smile, who cheered not only on the sidelines of school games, but also in the everyday moments of life. In that sense, she continues to be a rallying spirit for kindness, courage, and compassion. As word of Tristyn's murder spread nationwide, many people were saddened and horrified. The crime seemed too brutal and hateful for someone so young, and there was an overwhelming sense of sorrow that such a thing could happen at all. Media outlets covered every development, from the first reports of her disappearance to the guilty plea and final sentencing. Reporters discussed the role of social media, both how it helped investigators track Aiden's movements and how Aiden used it in a shockingly insensitive way. Experts on criminal behavior sometimes weighed in, offering theories on why a teenager might commit such a violent act. But no number of expert opinions could truly answer why Tristyn Bailey's life ended this way. In the wake of this tragedy, schools in St. Johns County took extra steps to provide counseling and emotional support for students who were shaken by the news. Teachers spent time talking to their classes about violence, empathy, and the importance of speaking up if they see or hear something suspicious. Patriot Oaks Academy, where Tristyn was a student and cheerleader, set up a memorial area and organized events to remember her. Students wrote messages of love and sympathy to the Bailey family, placed flowers and ribbons, and tried to cope with the confusing emotions that come after losing one of their own. Her cheer squad was particularly affected, as they had lost not just a teammate, but a friend who had shown dedication and a bright spirit. Meanwhile, mental health professionals used this opportunity to remind parents and guardians to pay attention to the behavior of their children and teens. They suggested parents look out for warning signs, such as a child expressing violent fantasies, showing uncontrolled anger, or boasting about hurting people. Though it is never easy to think that your own child might be in need of serious help, experts stressed that early intervention could prevent tragedies. Schools also considered implementing more mental health resources and highlighting existing programs so that students could speak to counselors or therapists if they were going through emotional turmoil. In some corners, there were debates about the fairness of trying a 14-year-old as an adult for first-degree murder. Critics argued that teenagers lack the full emotional and psychological development of adults, making adult punishments inappropriate. On the other hand, many people believe that the brutality of Tristyn's murder deserved the most serious legal consequences, regardless of Aiden's age. They felt that leniency would be an injustice to Tristyn and her grieving family. Judge Smith's sentence of life in prison with a review after 25 years tried to balance these concerns, recognizing Aiden's young age while also holding him accountable for a crime that shattered the sense of safety in the community. These ethical and legal questions about juvenile justice will likely continue long after the memory of this case is dimmed. Some legal experts insist that cases like Aiden Fucci's are extraordinary exceptions to the rule, as most teenagers who commit crimes do not engage in premeditated murder. Others argue that the teenage brain can be impulsive and prone to poor decision-making, but the level of planning and cruelty seen here goes beyond typical teenage impulsivity. Whichever side of the debate one falls on, this case will remain a point of reference for discussions about how to handle serious offenses committed by minors. For Tristyn's family, though, these debates do little to ease the heartbreak of losing their child. While the legal conclusion brought some finality, it did not bring Tristyn back. The days, weeks, months, and years after her death are filled with moments where they miss her laugh, her jokes, her cheerleading performances, and her presence at the dinner table. Mother's Day, once a joyful occasion, now carries the painful memory of the day they discovered she was missing and the horror that followed. Despite this, the Baileys have repeatedly shown remarkable strength by speaking out about their daughter's life, focusing on the love and energy she brought to every moment, and channeling their grief into the Tristyn Bailey Memorial Foundation. That foundation stands for many things. It is a tribute to Tristyn's spirit, a reminder of how precious and fragile life can be, and a beacon that may prevent future tragedies by educating people about staying safe. The foundation also supports legislation to protect victims and their families. By advocating for privacy in such horrifying cases, they hope to protect other families from experiencing further pain. In this sense, Tristyn's story has changed lives, inspiring new laws and raising awareness. Even in her passing, she has helped the world see the power of coming together to care for one another. Those who pass by the wooded area where Tristyn's body was discovered often speak of placing flowers or saying a quiet prayer. The sorrow of what happened there remains deep. Some people in the neighborhood have said they feel a chill when they think about how a girl so full of life could be taken away right under the watchful eyes of suburbia. Yet, there's also a kind of unity in the community now, a shared resolve to keep an eye on neighbors, watch out for children, and speak up if something feels off. In that way, Tristyn's life, though cut tragically short, continues to guide people toward greater watchfulness and empathy. Local supporters have set up more than one memorial bench or garden in Tristyn's honor, using teal and aqua tones that represent her cheerleading squad and her bright personality. On special days, such as her birthday or the anniversary of her passing, friends and neighbors gather to remember her. Through tears, they share stories of happier times, how Tristyn used to light up a room with a grin, how she supported classmates who were sad, and how she threw herself enthusiastically into cheer routines. These remembrances remind everyone that Tristyn was more than just a victim of a violent crime. She was a person whose life had depth, love, and countless possibilities for the future. Sometimes, people also talk about Aiden Fucci. They wonder if he, too, showed signs of trouble that went unnoticed. Could a teacher, a counselor, or even a friend have realized that his comments about stabbing someone were not just jokes? They debate whether or not these warning signs should have been reported sooner. In the end, though, the responsibility for what happened rests squarely on Aiden's shoulders. The legal system found him guilty, and the evidence clearly supported that verdict, while social and psychological factors might have played a role in who he became. Nothing can undo the harm he caused or fill the empty space in the Bailey family's life. Through all of this, the Baileys have found support from people all around the nation. They received messages from strangers offering prayers, condolences, and even small gestures of kindness. This outpouring of sympathy displayed how a tragic event can bring people together, encouraging them to extend warmth and help to a grieving family. It also underlines that no community is immune to the possibility of crime. Even in the safest neighborhoods, tragedies can occur, and what matters is how people respond to them. Do they turn inward in fear, or do they band together to comfort each other and work for positive change? In the end, Tristyn Bailey's story is one of heartbreak, love, shock, grief, and, ultimately, a striving for healing. It shows us how quickly a normal day can become a nightmare, and how the life of a promising young person can be extinguished by senseless violence. Yet it also teaches us that even in the darkest times, people can unite, share kindness, and ensure that a loved one's memory sparks good works. The Tristyn Bailey Memorial Foundation, for one, stands as a testament to the idea that something beautiful can grow out of unimaginable loss. While that can never replace the presence of Tristyn herself, it does continue the best parts of her spirit. There is also a lesson in vigilance. Friends, teachers, family, and peers can play a role in preventing future tragedies by paying attention to unusual or disturbing comments and behaviors. If someone repeatedly talks about wanting to hurt others, carries weapons in a threatening manner, or shows a fascination with violence, it is critical to alert responsible adults and professionals who can intervene. Though the blame for Tristyn's death lies firmly with the one who committed the act, awareness and communication could potentially save lives if it helps direct troubled individuals to the support they need before they harm themselves or others. Looking back at the timeline, Tristyn's birth in Singapore, her early years in that country, her move to Florida, her enthusiastic cheerleading at Patriot Oaks Academy, one is reminded how full of promise she was. The day before Mother's Day, she might have been thinking about the surprise she would plan for her mom or how she would spend her summer vacation. In the blink of an eye, that promise was replaced by grief. But in remembering her, we keep alive the love and energy she shared. Her story remains a reminder that every life has value, especially the life of a child on the threshold of teenage adventures. While Aiden Fucci now spends his days in a correctional institution, likely reflecting on the chain of events that led him to this point, the Bailey family continues their journey of mourning and tribute. They hold events and fundraisers in Tristyn's name, work with officials to pass laws that protect the dignity of murder victims, and share her story to encourage empathy and caution. Every day they wake up missing a daughter, but they also wake up dedicated to making her life mean something more than just its tragic end. They choose to remember Tristyn in her cheer uniform, laughing with friends, caring for others, and dancing with all the energy of a 13-year-old who believes life is full of endless possibilities. In a world where tragic news can sometimes feel overwhelming, Tristyn's story also showcases the resilience of a family that refuses to let sadness define her memory. Her parents and siblings took their personal agony and transformed it into a cause that might just save another family from going through this pain. Stories like these can inspire people everywhere to stand up for one another. Keep an eye out for potential dangers and support each other through life's darkest moments. If there is a single takeaway, it might be that love and community can provide a healing path, even if the scars of such a horrific crime never fully fade. The question of why a bright, caring 13-year-old girl ended up alone in a wooded area in the early morning hours with someone who intended her harm remains a haunting one. The details can never fully be understood by those who loved her, nor by the many who followed her story from a distance. Yet, the response from the community, the work of law enforcement, the final verdict in court, and the establishment of the foundation ensure that Tristyn Bailey did not vanish into the night without consequence. Her life counted. Her story ripples outward, changing hearts and minds, reminding people to cherish their loved ones, and pushing everyone to create safer, more caring communities. Perhaps the greatest tribute to Tristyn is the promise that her family and community made, to live in a way that honors her joyful approach to life. This does not mean ignoring the pain or pretending the tragedy did not happen. Rather, it involves carrying forward the love, the cheer, and the kindness she offered so freely. In that sense, Tristyn continues to shine, lighting a path that encourages young people to follow their passions, stand up for each other, and remember that life can be fragile. Where there is compassion, there is hope, and where there is memory, there is a spirit that can never be truly extinguished. Finally, as we reflect on the events that transpired on May 9th, 2021, and in the months and years that followed, we are reminded of how quickly a community can come together to seek truth and justice. From a moment Stacey Bailey realized her daughter was not in her room to the extensive search that ended in the heartbreaking discovery of Tristyn's body, neighbors and law enforcement worked side by side. Though the end result was not what anyone wanted, the process showcased the power of unity in the face of horror. In the legal system, swift charges and a thorough investigation led to a guilty plea and life sentence, demonstrating that society can and will stand up against violent crime, even when committed by a minor. The heartbreak of Tristyn Bailey's death will remain an indelible mark on St. Johns County. Yet, if there is any solace, it lies in the transformation of grief into purposeful action. The Bailey family, through their Memorial Foundation, has extended love and care to others, hoping that no other parents suffer what they endured. Every day, they keep alive the essence of their youngest daughter, a girl who cheered, laughed, and believed in the goodness around her. Her story continues to travel beyond the borders of her community, touching hearts across the country and reminding us that life is precious. By remembering Tristyn's radiant spirit, we stand together against the darkness that tried to silence it. This is the lasting impact of Tristyn Bailey's memory. She was more than just a victim. She was a kind and uplifting presence, a beloved daughter and sister, a bright young cheerleader who had her entire life ahead of her. Her legacy, carried by her family and community, is a powerful message that, even when faced with senseless tragedy, the best parts of our shared humanity, our empathy, kindness, and resolve can shine through. She will not be forgotten. In telling her story, we keep her name alive, and in so doing, we honor the life she lived and the memories she left behind.